June 1st, 2026. Welcome to the video. Somewhere over the Strait of Hormuz this past weekend, an American drone was doing its job, flying over international airspace, unarmed, surveilling the most strategically critical choke point on Earth. 21 nautical miles wide, 20% of the world's oil supply moving through it every single day. And the IRGC Aerospace Force shot it down. Not by accident, not by miscalculation, deliberately. What follows is based entirely on open-source reporting, confirmed CENTCOM statements, and verified news accounts. This is military analysis, not speculation. Before we get into the response, let me tell you something about where we are geographically and strategically, because it matters for everything that comes next. Qeshm Island sits right in the throat of the Strait of Hormuz. It is Iran's forward operating position for surveillance, drone coordination, and harassment of commercial shipping. The radar and communications nodes on that island are not defensive infrastructure. They are the nervous system of the IRGC's entire interdiction network in the strait. And on Saturday, May 31st, the IRGC used part of that network to track and shoot down a US MQ-9 Reaper drone operating over international waters. Iran's own state television had IRGC Aerospace Force Commander Brigadier General Amir Ali Hajizadeh claim credit publicly and personally within hours of the shootdown. He told State TV, and this is a direct quote, that the IRGC reserves the legitimate and definite right to retaliate against any ceasefire violation by the US. There is one problem with that framing. The drone was over international waters. The US did not fire a single shot before the shootdown. Iran pulled the trigger first. Now here's where it gets stranger, and this is the layer that most coverage has completely ignored. At the exact same moment the drone was downed, a US courier was physically in transit carrying a revised Memorandum of Understanding to the Supreme Leader's office. A revised 60-day ceasefire proposal. Physically moving toward Iran's leadership while Iran's military was pulling the trigger on an American asset. The courier had not returned, the envelope had not been opened, and the IRGC fired anyway. If you've been watching from Malaysia, the UK, India, Canada, or anywhere else in the world, drop your country in the comments right now. This situation is affecting shipping lanes that touch every economy on Earth, and I want to know where you're watching from. Back to what CENTCOM confirmed publicly. On its official X account, the statement read that measured and deliberate strikes occurred on Saturday and Sunday in response to what it called aggressive Iranian actions. Those strikes targeted Iranian air defenses, a drone ground control station, and two one-way attack drones that CENTCOM said posed direct threats to ships in the strait. No American service members were harmed. That is the official confirmed picture. But the official picture does not tell you how it actually happened, and that is what we're going to break down right now. The locations CENTCOM named were Goruk and Qeshm Island. Let's talk about what those places actually represent. Qeshm Island's radar network is the IRGC's primary eye over the strait. It tracks commercial vessels, it cues drone attacks, it coordinates fast attack boat operations, and monitors US Navy movements. The drone command and control node at Goruk, which the original script called Goruk, is the brain of the IRGC's surveillance operation over the waterway. Without it, the network goes dark. Destroying both of those in a single coordinated strike package over 48 hours is not a proportional slap. It is a deliberate dismantling of operational capability. And here's the aircraft most responsible for making that happen cleanly, one that almost nobody in mainstream coverage is even mentioning. The EA-18G Growler. 2 seats, electronic warfare variant of the FA-18F Super Hornet. Its entire mission is to find, blind, and kill enemy radar systems. The Growlers flying in this conflict are from Naval Air Station Whidbey Island, part of Electronic Attack Squadron 133, the Wizards, launching from the USS Abraham Lincoln, operating in the Arabian Sea under CENTCOM. The Navy confirmed their involvement through official photos released publicly. These aircraft have been flying combat support missions as part of Operation Epic Fury since March of this year. Here is what the Growler brings to this kind of strike that no other aircraft can replicate. It carries the ALQ-218 Passive Electronic Support Receiver, a system that geolocates enemy radar emissions without transmitting a single watt of its own signal. The IRGC radar activates to track the incoming aircraft or drone. The moment it transmits, the ALQ-218 has already located it to within meters. Then the Growler fires an AGM-88 HARM, a high-speed anti-radiation missile, which homes directly onto the radar emission and follows the signal straight to the source. The radar site transmits, the missile locks, the site is gone. The whole sequence takes seconds. The IRGC operators at Qeshm Island activated their radar to track what was happening. That is the last decision they made from that position. Once the radar network was down, the drone ground control station at Goruk lost its protective coverage. No radar means no early warning. No early warning means no defense. A precision strike, likely from an F-35 operating in the same package, hit the station while it was isolated and blind. The 2 Iranian one-way attack drones already airborne over the strait, drones that CENTCOM said were posing active threats to commercial shipping, were then neutralized by aircraft carrying laser-guided rockets. The F-15E has been used extensively in this role, with APKWS rockets, Advanced Precision Kill Weapons System, 70mm laser-guided projectiles that are effective, affordable, and accurate against slow-moving drone targets. At roughly $25,000 per rocket against drones that cost the IRGC around $30,000 each, the economics are not flattering for Iran. Iran's response to all of this? They fired 2 ballistic missiles at American forces in Kuwait. Both were intercepted. The Kuwaiti military confirmed air defense systems activated nationwide. There were no casualties on the American side. But here is what that missile launch actually tells you, and this is the part I want you to think about carefully. The IRGC did not launch those missiles because they had a military advantage in that moment. They launched them because they had just lost their radar network, their drone control station, and 2 active attack drones in a 48-hour window. Launching ballistic missiles at American forces in Kuwait after losing your eyes over the strait is not a show of strength. It is a signal of desperation dressed up as retaliation. And the timing with the ceasefire courier is not a coincidence. The IRGC knew negotiations were actively underway. They shot down the drone anyway. Which brings us to the most significant development of this entire situation, one that Iran's government is actively trying to suppress. Iran International, a UK-based outlet with a verified track record of sourcing inside Iran, reported this week that Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian submitted a letter of resignation to Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei's office. In that letter, according to sources cited by Iran International, Pezeshkian stated that IRGC commanders had assumed full control of critical government functions, that his administration had been completely sidelined from major decisions since the war began in February, and that he could no longer govern under those conditions. A fact check by The Week confirmed the resignation letter report, but also noted that Iranian state media subsequently published a statement from Pezeshkian at a cabinet meeting reaffirming his intention to serve, suggesting the resignation was either rejected or walked back. What is not disputed by any source, including Iranian ones, is this. There is a serious power struggle inside Iran's government right now between the elected civilian leadership and IRGC hardliners. Multiple outlets have reported that key decision-making authority has shifted from the presidential office to senior IRGC figures and to the supreme leader, leaving Pezeshkian's administration effectively unable to advance or implement policy. Think about what that means for the ceasefire negotiations that are actively ongoing. The people Washington is sitting across the table from, the civilian government, may not control the people pulling the triggers on drones and ballistic missiles. The IRGC shot down the American drone. The IRGC launched the missiles at Kuwait. And according to Iran's own president, the IRGC has displaced the civilian government as the real decision-making authority in Tehran. If that is accurate, even partially, then the US could negotiate a perfect ceasefire agreement with Pezeshkian's team, and it would be worth exactly nothing the next time an IRGC commander decides to pull a trigger. Stay with me. Because what this breakdown reveals about Iran's strategic position, and what the US actually has to decide next, is the part of this story nobody is giving you a straight answer on. And that answer is coming up right after this. So let's talk about Iran's structural problem here, because it is becoming more and more severe with every strike on their command and control network. The radar and communications nodes on Qeshm Island were not just hardware. They were the connective tissue between IRGC naval units, drone operators, fast attack boat crews, and whatever remains of their anti-ship missile infrastructure. Without functioning radar coverage over the strait, the IRGC cannot reliably track US Navy vessels. It cannot coordinate attacks on commercial shipping. It cannot see what is coming. They are still capable of causing disruption. Fast attack craft, mines, and one-way attack drones launched from mobile platforms are still in play. But coordinated, sequenced, radar-cued operations of the kind the IRGC was running before this strike package, those become significantly harder when your command and control nodes are craters. Now let's step back and look at the broader context, because the past 10 days have produced more strategically significant developments than the past 2 months combined. On the diplomatic side, the Trump administration dispatched a physical courier carrying a revised 60-day ceasefire memorandum. That courier was in transit when the drone was downed. Both sides pulled the trigger before the envelope was opened. That is not miscommunication. That is a fracture. And I know some of you in the comments are wondering, is this IRGC behavior actually new, or is it just what Iran has always done? That is a legitimate question, and the honest answer is that the IRGC has always operated with significant autonomy. But what appears to be different now is the degree of that autonomy. The Pezeshkian resignation report, even if incomplete, even if partially walked back, represents the first time Iran's own elected head of government has formally communicated to the supreme leader that the civilian government has been operationally sidelined. That is not a normal diplomatic signal. That is a structural admission. And Trump himself, in announcing the ceasefire extension, described Iran's leadership as being in disarray. That word choice was not accidental. The question this raises, and it is the question with no clean answer, is what exactly does a negotiated agreement accomplish if the organization with the actual military authority is not the organization sitting at the table? Let's talk now about 3 broader developments that connect directly to what is happening in the Strait. First, America's Golden Dome Missile Defense Initiative. The $185 billion integrated system designed to link every radar, satellite, and interceptor in the U.S. arsenal into a single real-time network is reportedly on track for initial operational capability this summer. Anduril and Palantir are building the command and control software backbone. When complete, the system is designed to stop ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and hypersonic weapons aimed at the U.S. homeland. The timing matters because the IRGC's ballistic missile response against Kuwait, intercepted, no casualties, is the same category of weapon the Golden Dome is designed to defeat at a much larger scale. The U.S. is watching these Iran engagements as live testing conditions for systems and doctrines it intends to rely on for homeland defense. Every intercept over Kuwait is data. Second, China. For 7 consecutive days following the U.S. strikes on Qeshm and Goruk, the People's Liberation Army Air Force conducted 0 sorties near Taiwan. 7 straight days with no PLAAF activity near the strait, the longest pause since 2022. There are 2 plausible explanations. China is giving diplomatic space to the U.S. during an active conflict, signaling it does not want to add a second flashpoint. Or, China is watching the carrier strike group operations, the Growler deployments, the precision strike sequencing, and gathering as much intelligence as possible. Both explanations are probably partially true. What China is definitely doing is taking detailed notes on how the U.S. destroys radar networks, neutralizes drone swarms, and maintains carrier operations in a contested maritime environment. Taiwan is separated from mainland China by a strait that is 110 miles at its widest, significantly wider than Hormuz, but presenting similar operational challenges for any force trying to project naval power under aerial and drone threat. Everything the U.S. is learning and demonstrating in the Persian Gulf is being filed and analyzed in Beijing. Third, U.S. munitions supply. There are ongoing reports of pressure on American stockpiles of precision-guided munitions, a concern that has been raised repeatedly since the extended Ukraine conflict and has now compounded with active operations in the Persian Gulf. This is a topic that deserves its own detailed breakdown, and we will get there. But the short version is this. The cost and production rate of AGM-88 HARM missiles, APKWS rockets, and interceptors do not yet match the pace at which they are being expended in active operations. That gap is not a crisis today, but it is a planning problem that has a very real timeline attached to it. Now let's get to the 40,000-foot analysis. What does all of this actually mean? Iran shot down that drone while a ceasefire courier was physically in transit, then fired 2 ballistic missiles at U.S. forces in Kuwait. Both missiles were intercepted. This is not a military miscalculation. This is a message from IRGC hardliners to their own civilian government and to Washington simultaneously. The message is, we decide when this ends and on what terms. Not Pezeshkian, not the negotiating team, us. The IRGC has built an economic empire around the Strait of Hormuz, maritime extortion at industrial scale running for decades. Drone threats, mine-laying, fast attack harassment, and the constant shadow of anti-ship missile capability have kept that empire profitable. A genuine peace agreement that reopens the strait to free navigation and removes the threat of interdiction does not just end a military confrontation. It ends the IRGC's primary revenue model. They are not fighting to win a war. They are fighting to outlast American political will long enough to preserve their position. And here is the impossible question this situation leaves you with, and I genuinely want your answer in the comments because there is no clean resolution here. The US has demonstrated it can destroy IRGC radar and command and control infrastructure quickly and precisely. The Growlers, the F-35s, the F-15Es, they work. The intercept systems over Kuwait work. But if the IRGC is now functionally independent of Iran's civilian government, if Pezeshkian's letter means what it appears to mean, then the US is fighting an organization that has no elected leadership to negotiate with, no political cost to absorb, and no civilian population it answers to. You can destroy every radar site on Qeshm Island. You can eliminate every drone ground control station between Bandar Abbas and Goruk, and the IRGC can still launch ballistic missiles for mobile platforms the next morning. So the question is this. At what point does infrastructure destruction alone become insufficient, and what comes after it? Do you think the IRGC can be militarily degraded to the point where meaningful negotiations become possible? Or has Iran's civilian government been so thoroughly displaced that the only path forward looks very different from a ceasefire deal? Let me know in the comments. Drop your country, give me your read on this, and tell me what you think the next 72 hours look like. If you want deeper coverage of the munitions supply problem and what the US production timeline actually looks like, follow me on X and Instagram. I am posting updates there every day as this develops. This is a situation that is moving fast. Looking away right now means missing the next move. And the next move in this conflict is going to tell us everything about whether a negotiated outcome is actually still on the table. Stay with it. I will see you in the next video.
Enemy very close. I need equipment.
ভাই নেট দাও গ্রেনেড গুলা দাও তো গ্রেনেড গুলা দাও গ্রেনেড নেট গুলা দাও নেট গ্রেনেড গুলা দাও গ্রেনেড গুলা দাও নাইস সুন্দর
I placed a launch pad. I need equipment. Still on cooldown. Help me.
ফাইসা গেছো উপরে আসি মারো
Head there. Drop at my location. I got a team boost. I bought a team boost. Spotted. I got a team boost. Resources here.
Mission accepted.
I need equipment. Thanks. Enemy spotted.
Mission accepted.